Okay, sorry, I only have 15 minutes and it went fast. Okay, so strength training is really important because it does build up the muscles and you can burn more calories just sitting there, and it helps protect the joints as well. And it's really good for senior citizens as well. But some women sometimes are a little afraid of weightlifting. They think they're going to bulk up like men, and that's not true. You really do need the testosterone to be jacked up like that. And the women who are usually are taking testosterone that are super jacked. So if you're a woman, you don't have to worry about that. But it's more women get, maybe a man might get more muscles where a woman will get muscles, but maybe it would also be more toned as well. Um, so if you really exercise to fatigue, it's good to let your muscles rest for 48 hours because it's kind of a breaking down the muscle and reforming. But if you're not exercising to fatigue, you can still do it every day if it's like a moderate amount. But many people like lift, maybe do 3 sets of 10 or depending on where you're at, or 12, and then they do it until they can't do it anymore, so that to fatigue. Okay, and the third one is stretching, and that improves flexibility and increases the range of motion. And it really, that's very good in balance and blood circulation. And it also improves stress. So doing yoga, you also get in tuned more with your body, and it feels good and it's relaxing. Okay, so depending on what your goals are, the frequency, intensity, and time and type um, can help improve fitness. So frequency is the number of times you do an exercise. So you can do uh, uh, from a couple times a week to every day. Intensity is how hard you're working out. And there are several ways of figuring out how intense you're working. One way is just, rate yourself. Are you a 1 or a 10? So are you working out and you can't do any more? This is your limit. Or are you about 50% of the way? So that actually is a good, effective way of figuring out. Another one is to look at your heart rate. So to work in the aerobic region, you should be between 60 to 80% of your maximal level. And there's a math formula to do your maximal level. It's 220 minus your age, and that's your maximal level. So you want to do 80.85 times that, or zero point 0.6 times that, and that will give you 60 to 85%. Or you could just go on here and then figure it out and let a website figure it out. That's easier. And duration is also important. So how long you're doing it. So aerobic exercise should be between 20 to 30 minutes to get the benefit, or up to 60 minutes or longer. Um, but you can also, sometimes people just are so busy they can't, um, you know, invest all that time all at once. So breaking it up is perfectly fine. But getting 150 minutes of moderate activity a week will give you the best health benefits, better health benefits. So here are some different frequency, intensity, time, and type. So fit. So cardiorespiratory should be about 3 to 5 days per week, where muscular fitness is 2 to 3, and flexibility 2 to 3. Intensity, you should be between 64 to 95% of maximal heart rate. To get muscle fitness, 60 to 80% of 1 RM. And then just kind of stretch until you feel a little tense. So time for aerobic should be between 20 and 60 minutes, or 8 to 10 reps, and then for each set, maybe 2 to 4 sets. And for flexibility, about 2 to 4 repetition for each muscle group, and hold for 10 to 30 seconds. So for different types, cardiovascular could be walking, jogging, biking. For muscle fitness, machines with stacked weights, resistant bands, weights, free weights. If you don't have anything, you can use cans, bottles of water, your child. And then for flexibility, stretching or yoga. So this is a nice pyramid to give you an idea of what you should be doing for exercise. So moderate activity daily, and then minimum amount of sitting around. And now they say actually that we really do sit a lot more. And now they think that sitting is the new heart disease. So many people will sit at work and they come back home, they sit in front of their computers or their TV, and that is really causing a lot of problems. So reducing the amount of time you just sit is really important. So some people have standing desks, so they went to their work, and their work let them have a desk that you can adjust to standing up, and that actually burns more calories. Some places let you have a treadmill. So I'm not sure if I could walk and think. I'm not that coordinated at the same time, but it really gets you moving. So sometimes just going on the treadmill and at a moderate pace and then working, it can be really good. And if that's not possible, try to get up and move every certain amount of time. I know the Fitbit and other kind of watches like that will kind of zap you. I have one, so it zaps me. And you can set it anytime you want. So once an hour, if you've been sitting and you haven't moved, it'll zap you and say, get moving. And so it reminds you to get up every hour or so and move around, and that will help too. So reducing the amount of time we sit is very important. And you'll also notice how well your body adapts. So if you just start walking, you might be like, this is too much, but you'll find really quickly that your body adjusts to it. So keep with it. And it's exciting to see your body change too. So how does our food that we eat, what happens when we exercise, and how does our body get the energy when we start to do aerobic exercise or anaerobic exercise? So if you remember, aerobic means with oxygen, and as I mentioned, that's because we need the oxygen as the final electron acceptor, and that whole uh, Krebs cycle. We go through glycolysis, and we break the 6-carbon sugar, if you remember that, to 2 3-carbon sugars. And then we go into the Krebs cycle, and then the byproducts of the Krebs cycle is CO2. So that's why we breathe out CO2. And then we go into the electron transport system. And then we finally make ATP, which is our energy, but we need an oxygen to be the final acceptor. And then that's converted, and that's converted into water. Okay, by adding hydrogen ions. Okay, so that's aerobic. That's why we need oxygen when we're exercising. So anaerobic means without oxygen, and that's when we just go through the glycolysis. That is just sprinting. It's you just really run 100% of the time. So how long can you run if you're just all out? Not long. And even the fastest runners, can only go for 10 seconds. So it's a really fast energy. And if you're lifting weights too, you can't lift weights for very long. At some point, you're going to get fatigued. But if you are in good aerobic shape, you can run and run and run or walk. So some people run a marathon, some people run ultra marathons. So they run 100 miles. I know that's crazy. But you can, if you're at a moderate level of aerobic exercise, you can do that if you're in shape enough for as long as you want. So at the beginning, your body uses the ATP that's around, but that's just like nothing, just a few seconds of energy. Okay, so so we're using the ATP. If you remember, A stands for adenosine, T means tri, that means 3 phosphates. So we have 3 phosphates, and what we're going to do is we're going to break this bond, and we're going to make energy out of it, and we're going to use that for energy. Okay, so we take it, we make energy, and that energy is going to be used in our body, and we convert that to ADP, and then we eat, and then we add a phosphate to make it ATP. So it's constantly switching between ATP and ADP. And so what you eat will help your body get energy. If you eat carbohydrates, the major source of carbohydrates is glucose, because if you remember, the long chains of starch are chains of glucose all hooked together. So if you had a potato or bread, all that is sugar, all connected together, and that's a carbohydrate. And so we're breaking down the glucose, and we can use it right away. Like, oh, I need energy right now. Great, I just had a sandwich. I'm going to take that glucose and I'm going to use that energy, break it down into the glucose, 3-carbon sugar on, all the way to the electron transport, and then we get energy. Or like, oh no, I don't, I'm sitting around doing nothing. So my body's going to say, I don't need that glucose right now. I'm going to store it. And the first place it stores it is as something called glycogen. And there's a lot of terms that are very similar. So we have glucose and then we have glycogen. So glycogen is just like starch. So long chains of glucose, but the connection between the glucose molecules is a little bit different. But it's our version of starch. And that's stored in the liver, and it's also stored in muscles. So what's stored in muscles stays in muscles, like Vegas. But what's made in the liver can be transported to can be actually broken down and into glucose and used in other parts of the body. So during anaerobic respiration, pyruvate is converted to lactate. So if we're running really a lot and we're using the anaerobic respiration, we're going to be making pyruvate, and that's going to be converted into lactic acid. So if you don't have oxygen, we're going to go into the making lactic acid. And that's great because it gives us a little bit of sugar, a little bit of ATP. So we get much more molecules, like 36 ATP if we go through the Krebs cycle and electron transport. But if we just go through glycolysis, we get a lot less. But that's okay. We have a little bit of energy. And we make lactate. But if we make lactate, we have to convert it back. So we're going to take the lactate, bring it back into the liver, and that's going to be rejuvenated back into glucose. And this is called the Cori cycle. So for some people, it was thought that being fit means to be a little bit more tolerant of lactate levels. So sometimes this actually was thought to cause muscle soreness, and if it gets too high, then you just stop because it's painful. But now the evidence isn't quite supporting that, so it's a little controversial if that's really the case. So the buildup of lactate may or may not be what's making people stop. But in the past, it was thought that lactate levels made a person be like, oh, I can't go on anymore, it's painful. So as you get more and more fit, you get more and more tolerant of lactate levels. Okay. And so again, also the more fit you are, the better you are at storing glycogen. So if you just started running, you might not make a lot of glycogen stores. But if you've been running for a long period of time, you'll be making lots of glycogen storage. And this is called carboloading. So people before they run a race might eat a lot of carbohydrates, and then that makes them able to run marathons.